We're live.
Okay, so welcome to this afternoon's Sharing Good Practice, the senior school session online. And I'm very pleased to have with me Ian Phillips from Haberdasher School and the chairman of the ISC's Digital Strategy Group. We have a good set of presentations to share with you this afternoon from people and teachers. And I know that there are people watching this afternoon's live stream. So welcome to you all. And please sort of join in the conversation by using the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. And with no further, we'll pass to Ian Phillips. Ian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ian, and it's a pleasure to do this and to work on this in joint association with your company. It's been a pleasure. It's a shame we can't do a selfie like I would have liked to have done to kick this off, but I am delighted to be able to welcome all of you to carry on sharing good practice for teaching and learning. The idea of creating learning networks is really important. What can we do to build these and reduce our workload as teachers while still improving our preparation of youngsters for their future? I think that's the question, and I think that question is both urgent and important. The aim at ISC and at Haberdashers as well is simple. What we want to do is share what we see as good practice and how good relationships with each other, with educators and with educational technology companies, and how that is impacting on student learning and helping us to get the best return on our investment or our investment of time. Can I ask you all to note the hashtags, and if there's anything that you want to know or there's anything you want to share, then please use these hashtags to share. So this is the ISC Digital Twitter account, and please do tag us in that. That would be great. And this, I suppose, this is our challenge, is and not just to think about how to train our students to use technology. I think it's much more to move beyond this and move beyond thinking of tech as a tool. Instead, we need to think about how to nurture students' ability and confidence to excel both online and offline in a world where digital media is ubiquitous. We need to make the choices, and I think not only do we need to help students with this, we need to model this ourselves because we know how important our example is for students. So, big question. What was your favorite use of technology last year? In the last ISC Digital Conference, we were able to hear from all of you how important this is, not only to us at ISC Digital, but to everybody. And this has made us a bit more ambitious about what we can achieve by sharing good practice and developing the relationships that we're doing. Digital schools are now preparing students for their future. We also talked about some questions like how employment and recruitment are changing, and the curiosity and creativity that we need to support students to develop, to be able to solve problems in an automated world and become global citizens, innovative and entrepreneurial. These are big questions and big aspirations, but the problem we have is, as teachers, we are already inundated with initiatives. And where does this time come from? So one of the things at ISC we are looking at is how we can make it easier, because we certainly can't make it any harder than it currently is. And I think the key to this is collaboration. It's working with other teachers, working with educational technology companies and also schools working with each other to try and reduce workload and increase impact. When I was very lucky to take a visit to High Tech High in 2015. And during this time, I saw the impact there was between teachers and the impact that teacher collaboration had on reducing workload of the staff. I mean, one of the things Paul Curzon says is if all of us do one thing well and we share that, then we're able to reduce the workload for all of us. And I think that's really important at this point. Hattie's work, which I'm sure some of you will be aware of, looked at the impact of different initiatives upon teachers and the impact that has on progress in the classroom. And if you look here, the impact of teacher collaboration has an impact size of 1.57. Also, if we're going to try and reduce the workload for ourselves, why not share more responsibility with the student? Clearly, we're trying to achieve independent learners. We're trying to achieve collaboration in students, and we're trying to help students take more of our responsibility for assessment. If that's the case, then clearly that can help us to do more and do more better. Wicked problems, what are they? They're problems that can't be solved, but they can be tamed. And there'll be talk later on, and there was a great talk this morning about computational thinking and the impact that has. And how can we amplify human ingenuity? Our students have been using this methodology for the last 2 years. This is a GCSE group, and one of the great things that we're in the position of now is we're looking back at the course and the way we've taught them, developing student responsibility, student agency, and allowing the students to take much more responsibility for their own learning. Now, 2 years in, we're seeing the benefits of that. Not only the students independent, not only are they taking control and developing themselves as learners, but they're also able to excel within an examination situation. This was always the concern, that if we spent more time on skills and less time on content, that it might have an impact upon their achievement in exams. The truth is, it's not the case. And when we ask them what do they like about the way they learn, they like that independence. They like to be able to have that control over how they learn best, and so they can become smart learners. Our very first project with this class was to give them a problem, to ask them to find a problem to solve. Rather than give them a problem to solve, they found their own problems, and we found that give them such great student ownership. We scaffolded that and allowed them to struggle and develop resilience. That the outcome of this is every boy in the class is now a confident, more competent learner, and they become authors of their own learning. I'm not going to run this video because I think that might stretch the ambitions of the technology slightly too much. Just to reiterate the ideas of computational thinking and how that has an impact again in reducing our workload, passing more responsibility onto the student so that we can actually be more efficient at what we try and achieve. Fullan wrote in 2011 in the ITIL report, he wrote, once in a while there's a convergence of independent but relatable forces that come together and create synergistic breakthroughs in societal learning. And I think we're at that point now. And I think the idea of us working together, but working also with educational technology companies, as we're doing today, is the way forward to be able to make our work smarter, more efficient, more creative, more innovative, and therefore to be able to model that to the students. So this is us. This is what we're trying to do at the ISC Digital Strategy Group. Here are the hashtags. I mean, it's wonderful today to be able to start this day off, to look at how we can become smarter, how our collaboration together can enable us to do better. And please do get involved. Please do use the hashtags. And if you've got anything great to share from today, please do send it through so we can actually host it on the ISC Digital website. We're not trying to create a new resource here. What we're trying to do is just to bring things, the best work together. We're trying to aggregate the best resources. Okay, so delighted to be able to kick things off this afternoon. Just one question before I pass on back to Ian. It's clear that all of you will have had some experiences this year that are particularly useful. If I could ask all of you to think about one thing that you felt was the most useful use of technology that you'd had this year, and if I could ask you to share that. And lastly, if I could ask you to think about what it is you'd like to achieve this afternoon, and please, if you could share that as well, that would be fantastic. Okay, thank you very much, and back over to you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Ian, for kicking off this afternoon session in your almost excellent style, and some great points for us all to think about there. This is a sharing of good practice event, and it's important for the audience as well as the presenters to have the opportunity through this session to be able to share those ideas. Just before you leave us at this stage, Ian, one of the things that you've highlighted is a challenge of time for teachers in school, and we've seen some great examples this morning. I'm sure we'll have more this afternoon of where we're encouraging students to be peer assessors and peer supporters of the learning that's taking place. Are you seeing more of that sort of taking place in schools across the country? Is it more in the sort of early years, or more in the senior schools, that the peer working is taking place? Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think most of this comes down to individual teachers. You know, if individual teachers are happy to let go of the reins a little bit and to allow students to take more of an active role in controlling the lesson, then once they see the benefit of that, I mean, what teacher, if they realized that students peer marking first could save them an enormous amount of time, what teacher would not allow students to take more responsibility? But it's quite a mind shift to be able to allow that.
It is, and a follow on, I guess, from that point is the attitude of school leaders to driving innovation within their schools. The time that teachers need to become expert in the use of these new technologies, is there a correlation in your mind? How does your school sort of create that space and time for the teachers to truly get to grips with these new technologies?
Well, I mean, if we looked at if we worked at Ford's, Ian, me and you, and we were on the whatever the role is that's left at Ford now that doesn't have a robot doing it, but there must be some roles left. If we were going to use a machine, we wouldn't be allowed to use the machine until we were certificated. If we'd been on a course and it was rubber stamped that we'd done it, whether that was a virtual course or a real course, that's what we'd have to do. If you're a dentist, if you're a doctor, whoever you are, we'd be expected to have the right amount of training to be confident and competent to use that technology. Yet teachers, for some reason, we think, because they're such smart guys, and I think, you know, we should be flattered by the respect that the system gives us, that they give us technology and just expect us to work out how to use it as most efficiently as possible. And I think there are a number of significant things that came up in our last conference, and one of them is that the model and the understanding of training that has been used by the education system for I don't know how long is no longer valid. You know, the Singapore American School, they currently went through an enormous change to radically adapt to a student-centered environment. They sent staff off to all parts of the world to spend time at schools where they felt effective teaching and learning was taking place. Is that training? Is running sessions, is working with educational technology companies on developing individual schemes, is that training? I mean, when we have to look at the model that we've had in the past, where you go on a training course for a day and you come back and then you're expected to put that in place, you know, we need to rethink what we're doing, and we need to find a way of measuring the effectiveness of what we've done to make sure that we ongoing keep provide staff with the best opportunities to develop these skills.
No, that's an excellent point, Ian. Do you want to finish just with one comment about your impact research programs?
I'd love to. So we've decided at ISC Digital that we would, rather than talk about things, which we've done for the last 10 years, we would try and actually do something. So we've actually now launched 4 action research projects. The first one of those has been finished and is just currently being written up, and I think it should go live this weekend, and I think the snow might help with that. So, and that was in GDPR. The next one is in May, and what we'll be looking at there is we'll be looking at virtual reality and the impact that virtual reality is currently having within schools. And we're working alongside a number of companies, including Microsoft and Hewlett-Packard, and there's a company called Systems Active that we're working with as well, to actually develop some resources and show excellent practice and then document that. We've also been working with yourselves, Ian, haven't we, on the Google Expeditions, and we've got a number of other projects coming up where we're going to try and understand the value of all the different types of virtual reality and be able to then document those so other schools could just pick those up and use them. And all of this will be hosted on the ISC Digital website.
No, that's great, Ian, because I I think it's important that people understand and sometimes just reminded of the work that's being done in the background, so that they don't try to reinvent the wheels. So again, Ian, on behalf of everybody, thank you very much for kicking off this afternoon's good practice, good sharing practice session, and I'd like to thank you. And now we're going to pass the baton to James Goodman. James is the Director of Digital Learning at Monkton Combe School, not very far away from where I'm sat right now in Wiltshire, snowy Wiltshire, by the way. And James is going to talk to us about collaboration and data collection with Google Sheets. And so, James, going to pass the screen to you. The floor is yours if you'd like to share your screen.
Okay, yeah, good to see everyone. Thank you very much for being part of this. I'm going to very quickly kind of start to show you what I've been doing. And so we'll just start with here's the starting slide. This is me. This is our school. We're enjoying kind of half a snow day. We've managed to open today, but going to be closed tomorrow. And I'm going to start with a really practical session that I do with most of my classes. Most years I'm a maths teacher, and I've done it over the last 15, 20 years of teaching. I want to collect some data, and then I want to make use of it in different ways. And I found that the Google Suite has really revolutionized that process of collection, but then also what we then do with the data. So I'm going to talk you through a session that I've taught very recently,
James,
and we were investigating
slides at the moment. I can see you, but not your slides.
Apologies about that. Always good when the go.
You're very tidy, by the way.
Share. There we go. Is that better? All good. Okay, so you've just been looking at my ear probably fairly recently. So we're investigating if the data is correlated, kind of what information would you like to collect? So the idea of this session was this was going to be in a, we're going to be in a classroom, all 37 of us or however many, and we were going to kind of get some feedback about what information you would like to collect. So that's what I do with the students. For this case, I got hold of some tape measures, and I've actually kind of brought a whole load of tape measures to give out, and we were actually going to do this practically. But given that we're much more in a show and tell environment, the kinds of things they came up with were the standard things that they wanted to collect about themselves, and they tend to have much more interest in that data. They wanted to see whether or not their height was related to their arm span, whether or not they had an interesting one. They wanted to know whether or not their hand span was related to their shoulder width, and whether that had any dependence. So what I will do with my classes is that I will share with this via Google Classroom. I'll share a blank spreadsheet. I didn't actually pre-populate the names, but depending on the class that you've got, you can pre-populate the names there. And then live in the lesson, I actually filled in the topics, the questions that they were going to answer. And we filled those in, and we agreed the 4 or 5 things that we were going to collect data about. And then what was revolutionary was the speed at which they could then collate all that information. And very quickly, within kind of 10 minutes or so, we had a full collection of data, and you can see the data that is held there, and these were the things that they were interested in collecting. So once we had that data, we were then asking the question, so how do we find out whether or not there is any correlation? And I kind of asked the students for ideas about what they thought we could do, and we had a discussion about what kinds of graphs might work. And then what took this to a new level was actually using the Explore feature within Google Sheets. And so if we click on the Explore feature, it uses a certain amount of AI to kind of guess what you want to do with the data. Okay, and you can look there at various different options of things that you can do, and it's kind of guessing that you might want to look at foot length and arm span, and you might look at one versus the other, and it does all different things that it's already guessing by just looking at the data what you might want to do. But actually, you can ask it a question. So you can say, so what is the correlation between, I think it even copes if I don't spell it correctly, height and arm span. There we go. And it says, well, the best graph you can do is a scatter graph. So it kind of backs up the discussion that we've just had. And it also gives us a formula. And this kind of brought very quickly to light. I was doing this with a younger class, not an A-level class. And actually, it brings to light this idea that actually there's a number that we can put to correlation. And then we can have a conversation about what does that number mean, and look for different things and investigate, okay, so what, if we were to compare other things, what numbers do we get, and how does that compare to what the scatter graph and the chart looks like? So we've got this idea that we can compare kind of those two numbers. So we can look at that, and we can compare the data, height and arm span. Okay, so we've got that data, so we can copy that chart into our data there. Let's just move it down and scroll down a bit, so we just have it below our data. Okay, just wait a minute. And then we want to, okay, so we want to look at this. Now, at the moment, this kind of doesn't maybe have the axes exactly where we want them. This dot out here, this is kind of way out of the scale, so we can't see exactly what that is. So we need to do a little bit of adjusting of that. And again, I'll show the students how to do this. We can click on it. We can click on the scales. And we close down the Explore feature, then just take a moment to stop thinking about that and come up with, on the chart, what we want to think about. Come on, best laid technology. Okay, chart editor, there we go. And want to look at the scale here. Okay, and so it doesn't seem to be wanting to play ball with me. So we can go through it that way, and we can look at the axes. First of all, we want to look at the horizontal axes. Just waiting for the to catch up. There we go. No, it's just not wanting to play ball. Let's see whether we can move on, and we can put this into. So then the next thing we want to do is we want to kind of draw our line of best fit over this. So we'll maybe come back and we'll have a look at how we can change the data points and the grid lines on there in a moment. So we're going to insert ourselves a drawing so that we can actually draw on top of this. And then we're going to paste into here. Again, we'll just wait for it to come up. And we're just going to paste an unlinked version. There we go. And there's our spreadsheet. And then we can have a conversation, and we can talk about how we want to draw a line of best fits. So one of the really common things that we want to do is students want to join kind of the lowest point and the highest point together. And is that the rules about how you draw a line of best fit? Or do we join the first one and the one over here? And we'll have conversations, and actually we can get students to share their drawings and their lines of best fit with each other, looking at what they've done there. And we can end up with the lines of best fit that we think is the best line of best fit on there. And again, once we get the grid lines and things working, we can, so we'll leave roughly the best line of best fit on there. If we get the grid lines working, then we can have a look at that slightly more accurately. So I'll just see whether that's going to play ball for us, but I'm sure we all know how to. Okay. So we're going to be in there, and then so one of the other things that I just wanted to just talk about was this explore function that is hugely powerful in analyzing data. So we've kind of had a conversation about that, but actually this idea that we can ask questions of the data that we've got. So if I take it to a different kind of data, so this might be some data that you've got within your school, and you want to kind of really interrogate this data and look at it. And I've taken this off a demonstration that was at BET with their permission, but it really kind of highlighted the power of using this explore function and the way that actually you can produce something that is kind of much more difficult to do with the traditional Excel and the formulae. So if, for example, you've got these lists of students and you want to know kind of what is the average conduct points in year 7 in, let's go for Farmhouse. So we can just type into the explore function. It gives us some ideas of formatting and pivoting, so it does all that guesswork beforehand. But we can ask it about the average conduct points in Farmhouse in year 7. And really quickly, it's returned that the answer is the average conduct points is 168. And actually, to write the formula for that, as somebody who kind of uses Excel quite a lot, is a really, really complex formula. You can see it here. So actually, if you want to receive that, there you go. You've got the formula copied, and you can look like an Excel whiz just by typing a bit of text. So just the power there of the form button, the explore button in Google Sheets. So those were the things that I just wanted to mention. Just really practical, kind of something that I'll use every year with my classes, and I hope that's been useful and given people some tips that they can go away with and use.
James, many thanks for that presentation. I'm looking at the chat from the people listening and watching you, and certainly the ability to use Explore in the way that you've shown it is so very powerful. I mean, we do gather so much data about students and activities that are taking place in school, simply to be able to know that those sort of facilities exist and are so easy to use. I'm sure we'll get lots of people looking at how that can be done. In terms of the questions that Ian raised at the start of today's session, is there one thing over the last 12 months which has really sort of sticks at the top of your mind in terms of the impact of technologies at your own school?
I think for us, the idea that students and staff can collaborate over a piece of work has been revolutionary and picked up by not just the really techie teachers, but actually has been picked up by by all sorts of teachers who want to have a document that they can work on together with their students. And that might be in a tutoring context, that might be in an academic piece of work that they're working on. It might be in a kind of ongoing diary. We do a fair bit of that with EPQ and with other things where the students are recording a diary, but having a member of staff who's on that. We have an art teacher who's taken up the idea of getting their students to reflect on their work on a weekly basis, and they just have an ongoing Google Doc with that member of staff who's able to write comments in on the students' work. And I think that has been, for us, kind of a real sign that the Google Docs is embedded in what we're doing and is a really revolutionary. It couldn't be done in a different way.
No, that's great, James. Thanks very much for sharing that insight, because I think Ian started talking about the importance of collaboration and the ability to share things and provide feedback in lots of different ways. So it's great to see that actually that's taking place across the staff and students at Moncton Combe School. So on behalf of everybody who's been watching, again, thank you for joining us to share the good practice. And now we're going to move further sort of west to Chris Pretjohn. And Chris is a geography and business studies teacher who I've had a pleasure to know for a number of years. Now teaches at Mount Kelly School down in Cornwall, but I believe has also taught out in Argentina. And so, Chris, without further ado, the floor is yours to talk about using Google Blogger as a learning platform. So over to you, Chris.
Great. Thank you very much, Ian. And just a little correction on the geography side of things. Mount Kelly's actually in Devon. We've crossed over the Tamar. I don't know how everybody else is this afternoon, but I'm looking out my window at the moment, and it's fair to say there's quite a strong blizzard coming in at the moment. Having been untouched by the snow, I might be racing off after this to go and collect my children from school. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Google Blogger and why I use it and how I find it it's excellent as a learning platform. You may not be aware, but Google Blogger is a part of the Google Suite. It's a sort of, you have to actually have it opened up by your admin in order to access it. Or, as in my case, I use it on my personal account. And what is Google Blogger? Well, it's basically, as you're probably all aware, you've probably checked out lots and lots of blogs. It's basically a place where you can keep an online diary, you can keep information, and you can add selected pages as well, which students can access and use. And I'll demonstrate some of those shortly. The reason I'm using Blogger is that the school I work at doesn't actually have the Google Suite, which is very frustrating for me personally, but they're adopting a different platform. And one of the things with Google Blogger, particularly using it through your own personal account, is that should you change schools or you can actually keep your blog up and running, and all that hard work and effort is still there. And that's something that's quite important to certain individuals. Now, I think Google Classroom is fantastic. But I also like Blogger from the point of view is that it's sort of open and it allows parents in particular to see what you're doing. And one of the things which is very powerful is at parents' evenings where you can say, right, please check out the blog. So what can you do? You can post your resources, lessons, homework. I'm also going to show you how you can embed class events through using Google Calendar. You can reflect on your teaching practices and you can share that with other educators. And that's another powerful thing, is that Google Classroom is relatively wall gardened within your school, whereas if you want to share it with external practitioners like I can do now, it makes it very, very sort of transparent and easy to do because it's naturally open anyway. And of course, you can put in a variety of feeds and presentations, as you'll see. You do need to activate it on your Google Suite for Education. Obviously, you can, turn it on for teachers and not for students, but that is what your admin would have to do. It's a very straightforward click button activity. So, like I say, I work at Mount Kelly, and I'm just checking that people can hear me. Is everything working okay, Ian?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Brilliant. Okay, that's fine. just double checking that. So Mount Kelly, there are a couple of Google acolytes, actually more than a couple. There's lots of Google acolytes. So what they are doing is they're using blogging within their classrooms, and that is supported actually by members of SLT. One of them here as an example is the Lower Prep blog, for instance, and they've subdivided it up into a year 3. It's quite a basic blog, but it has information for parents. It's all online. They've shared work that they've done as well. They include photos of students that are working, and because it's in control of the teacher itself, it just makes it very easy to sort of update and share, and the parents are really on board with it. So they would have weekend challenges that are sort of advertised on here as well. So students, it's almost like an online homework system, just as much as a visual presentation of the work that's going on, and so on and so forth. So there's some activities happening in the classroom there, making a volcano cake. Anyway, so that's one example. Another example is one of mine over here, which is my year 12-13 geography one. And I've got a range of pages. These are sort of separate pages, which I'll show you how you create. And down the right-hand side, I've got various sort of HTML sort of boxes, if you like, our Twitter feed and labels and so on and so forth. But what I'm going to demonstrate is this section here, which is where you can embed a Google slide, and you can make it live so that people can access that wherever they are. So without further ado, I will now go on to an example. So I've got the Blogger platform. So if you actually go to your Blogger platform, here it is. I've got several blogs. Up here on the left is the list of the ones I have, including my sort of little local football team which I run, and I've got all my classes there. So we're going to look at the GCSE geography one, and the GCSE, you can click on the view blog here. They've been doing some plate tectonic poems here, for instance, and uploading work and so on and so forth, which you can do there and then. And what's really powerful again is the parents can see that immediately. So I have several different pages linked in with the themes that we're actually covering. Now, if I went back to the Blogger, the front end of the Blogger, if you like, okay, the working end of the Blogger, here is the posts themselves. So this is like the diary, if you like, the diary entries. But over here, we have pages, and each of my pages that you can see on the left-hand side, including the specification and revision links. I'm going to look at theme 3, which is something which I'm doing with my year 10s at the moment. And I'm just going to show you how to embed a presentation. So we have a presentation 6, actually it's presentation 7. There's a story behind mine. I've got my presentation 6. I'm going to type in my objectives right here, and I can add those. But let's now go to my presentation 7, which I've just done with the class. It's about volcanic eruptions and so on and so forth, with the objectives and so on. Now, what I want to do is I want to embed that into my blog. I could put a simple link on there, but the issue is that you won't necessarily be able to see the sort of visual representation of it in Blogger itself. So there's a little way of doing that, which is very, it's a great way, I think, personally, which is something I've really started to use, and it's published to the web. So you got your presentation, we click publish to the web, and over here, it just basically tells you that it's going to make it visible to anyone on the web. So I like my slides to be a little bit smaller. You can have it sort of rotating so that the slideshow starts and they can see it sort of flicking over and the thing. I prefer not to do that because it sort of detracts it slightly. Anyway, and then you click your publish button here. Do you want to publish this? Yes, I do. And this is my hypertext, okay, my HTML. So I want to copy that. Then I go back to my Blogger platform over here, and I just need to change from the compose window, if you like, to the HTML. And it all looks very scary, okay, but all I'm looking for up here is the, if I just scroll to the top, it says presentation 7. I've got a couple of break codes there, and there's my objectives, and I'm just going to insert it just under that one there. And all I need to do is paste that in. Go back to my compose, and now what's happening is that presentation is now built in to my Blogger front end, and I can click update over here. There it is. Let's now view my blog, and it was theme 3, wasn't it? Tectonics, and you can now see the actual presentation there. So a student can flick through and immediately see that. But what I'm finding really powerful is that if I change something in my presentation, it will immediately, well, I say immediately, very, very quickly update it on the blog automatically. So let's say, for instance, I am back here in my presentation. I want to get rid of that photo, and I'm very much into GIFs at the moment. I don't know if you guys have found, if you type in volcano images, and you use this selector down here, you can actually look for animation. So it now means that, you know, you can put your GIFs in. So here's my GIF. I'm going to right click, save that one. I've already done it over there. I've called it volcanic explosion. Go back to my presentation, insert image, and I'm going to upload it from the computer. There it is. Click on that. So now I've got my GIF as my opening video, sorry, my opening slide on that presentation. Now, what will be interesting to see is if I go back to my GCSE blog and I click on number 3 here, will it appear live? There it is. So whatever I change in my presentation, it automatically changes in my blog. And that's really helpful, because quite often during a lesson you'll think, oh, I need to change that, or I need to add that exercise, and so on and so forth. So for me personally, I find that very, very helpful, and the students in particular, as do the parents. Parents got some very good feedback on that. Let's go back to the blog as well. Now you'll notice over here on the right hand side, I have got some blocks, which is basically a Google Calendar link. So again, I use Google Calendar extensively, and a student can sort of scroll back through and they can see all the homework that they should have added, and so on and so forth. So as I scroll back through, they'll be able to actually see. And if they click on it, let's hope I choose a good one. Okay, there, I mean, complete the book on social. It'll tell them what the date is it's actually due for. Sometimes I put a little bit more detail into my homeworks, but maybe not on that particular one. But anyway, year 10 haven't got any homework at the moment, lucky them. So how do you do that? Well, you need to embed from Google Calendar. And if I went to my Google Calendar, you're now going to see all my, not my Google Calendar, here we go. Let's just get Google Calendar. And if I want to see, for instance, here it is, display this one only. They were doing a revision for a tectonic assessment. I can simply add my year 10 homework here. Let's put study about tsunamis. Here we go. Save that one. There it is. And if I go back to my GCSE blog, not that one, it's the one over here, and I refresh, it should, there it is, pull through that calendar entry that I've just put, study about tsunami. So anything that I enter in class is immediately visible to to students and to parents, and they can click on that, and I could have more detail. I could have some links or some videos or whatever it is, or just get them to go to the page and use the Tsunami one, which is actually presentation 6. Well, let's just go back to the Blogger over here. So I've got all my pages, and in my layout as well, I can have various gadgets, and each of the gadgets, as you can see over here, you can click on add a gadget. And what I've done is I've simply added a tiny bit of HTML script, and I'll work through the process by which I've done that for my Google Calendar. So let's call it, I'll call it a test over here. Okay. If I went back to my Google Calendar for my year 10s, I would click on my options, settings and sharing. It's made available to the public. I have to make that particular one. Don't worry, your personal ones will not be. You just click on that one to make it available to the public. And then what you would do is you would get some code down here, some embed code, and you simply copy that in. Control C, I'm using, I've got so many things open now. Let's have a look. Here we go. And add a gadget. I think it was on, there it is, it's a little pop-up. Content, Control V to paste it in, click my save. There's my one. Now what should happen, let's just double click. Oh, I need to go and save my configuration first of all. Save arrangement over here. Let's click save arrangement. Let's view the blog, and now I should have, oh, look at that, it's come out super large because I forgot to change the settings on it. So you could have a giant HTML code. So yes, there it is. I needed to customize and fiddle around with the height and width. Basic error, pretty John, sorry. Okay, there it is. And I can now change that to this one, and I could change it to an agenda look. There it is, that's the one I was supposed to use. Okay, there it is. Let's copy and paste that one in. And let's go back to my, there it is, that's my ugly design. Let's edit it, paste it in, save my arrangement, and view my blog. And there it is. It's not quite the same size. You have to do a bit of fiddling. But that gives you an idea of how you can quickly embed a Google Calendar into a blog, which you could use for staff, for all sorts of things. Remember, this doesn't necessarily need to be a student blog. It could be a staff announcements. It could be a range of things for your blog. Okay, so I think there is the ability to add comments as well. Students could add comments simply by adding down here. And also, oh, that's the other thing, particularly with my year A-level ones, I have religiously since the start tagged every single one of my posts, so that down here, if they were looking for the topic when they were working on Ghana, for instance, it would show the presentations just on Ghana that we'd covered in class, and like I say, here are my links and so on. And anything that I update, like I have recently on this particular one with more up-to-date links and so on, geography being a very contemporary subject, it is important that I keep them up to date, then it automatically updates. So what else can I show you? The posts and comments section, like I say, a parent could comment, and you can actually have complete control over that via the settings. So post, comments and sharing, down here you can actually change in the who can comment section anyone, and then comment moderation. I always have comment moderation on, so that it sends me a message to say somebody's commented, are you okay with this particular example? There's loads of things you can do. You can change the theme of your blog to a variety of different ones. There's hundreds, I think, of different flavors and varieties on there, so plenty to play with. So like I say, blogging for me is excellent because it enables me to have complete ownership of something, which I can edit and change accordingly. I say I actually share this particular blog with a fellow teacher, Mr. Francis, and again, here we go. You can see where he has blogged, so that the students could search individually for his particular unit of work as well, just by clicking on the label Francis. So you can share editing rights as well within the blogger. So like I said, the introduction, it's actually it's like a virtual learning environment. It's a different system. You need a bit more technical knowledge, shall we say, maybe, than Google Classroom. Google Classroom is fantastic. It's wall gardened. I really like that. It now enables people to share to parents as well. But for me personally, I find the virtual learning environment and the open nature of the Blogger platform as being the best system for me personally, as I sort of quite often move from school to school and so on and so forth. So I think my time is just about up. If you have any questions, for some reason I can't see the question thread, but maybe Ian will be able to help me with that.
Yeah, no, Chris, thanks for an awesome sort of run through the use of Blogger. And I've been watching people sort of talk about what you've been demonstrating, and they equally are amazed to see what you've been done and encouraging, which is what it's all about. There are such a wide range of tools available to us that to be able to go and see your examples of how you've used it to create microsites and blogs, and how people can express themselves perhaps slightly differently through the use of a blog as opposed to a traditional Google website or some of the other tools. And I think that's really, really sort of powerful. Blogs, Google Blog has been available and used for such a long period of time. Is there a place where people could go if they're interested in people blogging as you are around geography, or are people blogging around English, or is there a blogger community of educationalists?
I must admit, I'm not a member of anything. The blogger community I have is actually internal within the school. It involves us just discussing how we're pushing blogging forward at the school. Like with anything online, there will be, and you know, I did some quick searching on blogging at the start, which is where I sort of got hold of a range of sort of different sort of ideas. But yeah, there probably are, Ian. I'm not an online member of any of them, but I'm sure if you wanted to search out, and please bear in mind, if you want some help and advice as well, just, you know, drop me a line at Pretty John, and you know, I will be more than welcome to help and assist you get set up and up and running.
Okay, no, that's great, Chris. So is it still snowing out that window of yours?
It is, and I need to go because I'm getting lots and lots of messages to come and save my children from imminent impending doom, shall we say?
Oh, okay. Well, we hope that that storm, Emma, doesn't sort of blow too much down in Devon. Now I've moved the school back to Devon rather than apologies to everybody.
No, that's right. It's Bodmin. I used to work at Bodmin, and so yes, moved across the border. We don't have parcels here. We have Devon parcels.
Oh, okay, well, enjoy your Devon parcels if you have them. Thank you on behalf of everybody for sharing your good practice, and drive safely as you go. Right. Okay. So there we have an insight into another one of the Google tools, and for those people who feel that being able to personalize and, you know, go into the actual coding of the thing, then it gives you the potential to use it in a much more individual sort of way. So if Chris can just stop sharing on your screen, Chris, then we can sort of now move across to Sam Palmer. And Sam is the teacher of history and politics at Monkton Combe School. And Sam's got a really interesting sort of title for his presentation, which is moving away from up on the screen, independence, personalization, and assessment using video materials. So Sam, you put a lot of effort into the presentation, and we're very much looking forward to learning more about how you're using video in this role. So the floor is yours, Sam.
Thank you very much. Can I just check that I can be heard?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So just to introduce myself, I'm Sam Palmer, and I'm afraid I'm not a director of digital or head of e-learning anything. I'm very much a bog standard history and politics teacher here at Monkton, and I probably wouldn't even describe myself as particularly techie. Before I very proudly completed my Google level 1 last week, my best achievement was probably a half GCSE, scoring a B in ICT. But I believe that tech can work really well for education and does work really well for education. And I believe it works best when it replaces and improves things that we already do, rather than being something that's a one-off whizzy example. So if you're anything like me, you will remember from your own time at school, the best lesson of the year used to be when your teacher left the room and this was wheeled out slowly. Video, I believe, can be great. It has great potential to infuse. It's great potential to have a change from teacher voice and to be able to provide great visual material. Yet, despite a huge amount of developments, how often do we use our expensive projectors and fancy whiteboards to do what our old friend, the TV on wheels, used to do? I think there's been some great developments in recent years with the idea of flipped learning. In actual fact, my year 10 class, who I would otherwise be teaching, are actually doing some flipped learning as we speak. By that, what we mean is a video is pushed to students, and there's a series of questions to answer that's based on that video. I was interested earlier on to hear talk about sharing best practice. I was actually at a politics A-level teachers day when someone told me about that Harvard University have posted a lot of their material on American government onto the website edX, which is brilliant. And I managed to find all the material that was posted on edX also on YouTube. And for me, it was a really good opportunity for me to be able to try and develop flipped learning, but for A-level students, as would be more appropriate. So the example I'm going to share with you today is something which I have used just a couple of weeks ago with my year 13 American politics students. And I think this works. It can work in class time, but in actual fact, I think it's a particularly good way of setting assignment or homework. So you should on your screen now see a Google Doc. And each of my students would be sent a copy of this. I had originally intended to send you each a copy of this today to work on, but what we'll do is we'll just get by with me walking you through what hopefully you would have done. So we have the aims of the session. In this case, they're towards the end of their their year on American politics, and they're looking at the judicial branch of government. And what you see below is I've posted them a clip to a lecture with instructions that I want them to watch the lecture and make notes. I think it's really important that rather than this being up on the screen, that students have the opportunity to be able to personalize their own learning by watching at their own speed and not watch for us together as one. It could be appropriate to use the sort of traditional flipped learning where there's a number of questions asked, but in actual fact, at year 13, at this stage, I'm confident they have a strong ability to know what they should be picking out, to know what they are able to retain, and what they need to note down. So I actually asked them to take notes on this in their own style. But as I'll discuss later, there is a way of me checking that that has been done appropriately. Okay, so first things first, I'm just going to show you a little tip which is particularly useful when it comes to trying to watch material and to be able to make notes. So firstly, if you grab the tab, so my one labeled judicial branch where my cursor is, if you grab the tab and move it over to the other side of the page, then that fixes into split screen. If I now open up the video, which I'm requiring students to watch, and do the same on the other page, then that should also fix there. If I just make sure I have the right tabs open, and you can see that hopefully it's a really good way of being able to watch video here on the left of the screen and to be able to make notes as they go along here on the right. I have below the lecture and below the notes are a series of links in which I encourage students to use to stretch themselves. It is the old extension material. The benefit of doing it online is that these are obviously instantly interactable. They're instantly interactive. Students can explore them to their heart's content. And equally, practically, it means I, as a teacher, don't need to spend hours at a photocopier, and economically, it doesn't mean I'm wasting a lot of paper and having things spare. So I ask my students that as they're watching this lecture and making notes, as they're going at their own speed, some will finish before others, and to make use of these useful links. So let's start by just pretending that I have sent you this, that we are watching, and we will see. You can see that in red where I've written notes. These are the notes that would be made.
If you were to walk up these stairs into that building through a long hallway, you'd come to the courtroom where the Supreme Court justices, dressed in their black robes, hear their cases. The Constitution establishes the judiciary, of which the Supreme Court is a part.
Okay, there's quite enough of that. And you can see in red, I've already written a few notes, which would be from the first couple of minutes of the video. What I am going to do, however, because there are going to be some questions asked later on, is to skip to some points in the video, which for today, I'm going to highlight as important. So I'm going to skip to here, and you'll see there's some useful information highlighted about each state having its own court system. I'm going to skip to here, and you can see there's important information about what majority opinion means. And I'm going to skip to here, where you will see that there's some important information about judicial review. So in my very best Blue Peter, here should be some notes I've made earlier. Okay, as I already mentioned, once that's done, there are links to be able to use. One of the important cases in this video is on a case called Citizens United v. the FEC. So you can see here on the right-hand side there's a useful link to be able to follow, which is opening now. And I think things like this are great because it has the opportunity for students then to be able to follow their own interests. So we already mentioned majority opinion, and then they can follow the link to what the majority opinion was. Okay, we'll close that down. Now, the question you're probably asking is, how do I know that the students have understood? And the Google Suite for Education has a brilliant function for assessment, and Google Forms has the potential to really make assessment a lot easier, both for student and for staff. So I have created a Google form here that will assess students' understanding of how they have understood the video. So if I go back to my original 2 pages, you can see I have left them a link here saying, once you finish, please answer the short assessment. So let's see how we get on, shall we? I've given you a few clues about what the answers might be. So let's have a go at this. I'm going to put an answer that goes like that. I'm then going to put an answer that goes like that. And then on judicial review, I'm going to put an answer that goes like that. So I gave you clues to that one. This last one, let's just guess that final answer. So once a student clicks submit, they have the opportunity to see how they did. And I got 2 out of 4. And where this is a really useful function in Google Forms, it's twofold. So firstly, I can make sure that this shows students what the correct answer was. So number 1 was wrong. It has a correct answer. And then also I'm able to give feedback to these. I think that's really useful for students to get really quick feedback while some quite complex questions like this are still in their mind. But even more importantly, it's not just that students are aware of that, but also that I am aware of that. So if I know I'm back on my original Google Forms, there's a responses tab where I can see that 3 people have completed this so far. There's one who got 4 out of 4, very good. There was then the one that I just did, which was 2 out of 4. That tells me that's a student I would probably need to go back to. And even worse, when James did this earlier on, despite the fact he can give a very good presentation, unfortunately, his knowledge of the judicial branch probably isn't up to scratch. Perhaps, James, you should have asked Google Explore for some of these answers. Okay, as I said right at the very start, I think the Google Suite has lots of potential here. It gives many options for assessment for learning, for personalization of learning, and for greater student interaction. So I hope you found that interesting. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, then hopefully you can see my comments already, which should be able to link to my email address if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Sam, thanks for excellent presentation. I've been watching the chat sort of while you've been going through your session, and I think you know, the phrase that you used to describe yourself as a teacher experienced in technology, I think certainly understates what you've achieved. So many congratulations on that. I've been working with Google Tools for 10 years or more, and yet there are things we all forget things, so your ability to be able to use the huge wealth of YouTube videos out there and provide the shortcut links, I think was excellent. And I'm sure that people will be looking at doing that with resources that they have in their schools. And I think also just a reminder of the way that you've used Google Forms to create those assessments where the students can actually get almost an immediate feedback, and more than just whether I got 2 out of 4, but the depth of feedback. I think that also is so important, because I remember listening to somebody else saying that if the gap between doing the piece of work and getting the feedback is long, then the feedback is almost worthless. Whereas if the feedback is very close.
Sorry to interrupt. Especially relatively complex concepts like this. This is defined in some quite complex terms at the end of year 13, and I think some immediate feedback and immediate correction is very important at that stage.
Yeah, no, I can completely agree with that. So again, on behalf of everybody who's watching from across the country, Sam, thank you very much for sharing your ideas and sharing sort of good practice with us this afternoon. And hope you stay around for the last couple of sessions, but enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you again for your contribution.
Thank you very much. Very welcome.
Okay, so now we've got 2 more sessions just to finish our afternoon senior school sharing good practice event, and I'd like to invite Paul Farrell to actually come and share some ideas on creating custom maps. Paul, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks very much, Ian. So we're going to look at customizing maps. I'm sure you're all familiar with maps that you use on a day-to-day basis to get from A to B or whatever, but you might not be aware that Google offer you the option to customize your own maps. This is a customized map that I'm going to be working on in a moment, but the first question is where on earth do I find them? Easiest way is to do a search for My Maps, if you can spell them correctly. And the first hit that pops up is usually your Google Maps. So it takes you to there, invites you to get started if you haven't already got started. And then you'll be presented with either the map you've already created or the single create a map button in the top left-hand corner. And you can see here's the one I've just created earlier. Here we can see I've got rather a number of maps. Okay, so here's the one I've already created. I've given it a title. You simply just click on the title like you do on a Google Doc, and you give it whatever name you like. And just a couple of things about the navigation. You'll notice that in the top right-hand corner where you'd normally expect to see the share button, it's not there. The share button is in this panel on the left. This is kind of your working area in Maps, and you can see in the middle there, there's a share button there. Okay, so let's just do a start. Let's just think we might be doing a local study. I can't spell properly. Leicester Cathedral, you found it annoying. A local studies project about buildings and their usages and ages or whatever it happens to be. So I've done a search for my local cathedral. It comes in as a green spot, and I can then immediately choose to add it to my map. The color will change. You can see it's automatically found the location and the website of it. I haven't done any of those things. And I've got a series of edit tools that allows me to add in information. So I could have been out on the street doing a survey of the business usage and collect photographs. I haven't been doing that, but I can do a search. So I'm going to edit this. I'm going to go to camera. You can see across the top, I've got a whole series of options. If you've already got the URL for it, you can post it if you want to upload, etc., etc. You can take pictures of the webcam. So if you're actually out there on a device that will collect the images, but I've just done an image search. I'm going to do a search for Google Leicester Cathedral, and what you can do is you can add these to the pin, and if you add more than one, when you set it up to preview and it's on the web, for example, for people to see, they will see all the images as a little mini slideshow that runs through. You can add information. If you want to, so you can add extra information into the actual tab. So you've got the information you need. So there's the first stage, adding in individual maps. And this could be building usage. This could be my house, yeah, in preparation for students to calculate distances from their house to school, for example. There's all sorts of practical applications that you could use to, for adding individual pins. And you remember at the beginning I said you've got that share button there. So that share button allows you to share it with your class. So they can all be in here sharing this map, adding in their own information. Okay, so I've added the first one in. So it might well be then that I need to know how to get from A to B. Okay, so I've clicked across my little toolbar here to this arrow here, which is add directions. And you'll notice that it's already guessed I want to go to Leicester Cathedral. So I'm going to leave that and I'm going to go to another location, Victoria Park, Leicester. Let's take me to Victoria Park Road, but that's near enough. And it shows me on the map the directions from place A to place B, which kind of allows the kids to see where they're going and what they're doing. Okay. So adding the directions is a really neat little way to add extra information if they want to do it. So if they are doing a field trip, they might want to including all the finds and photographs that they find. They could also include the route they're going to take from school to wherever it is, whether it's a local search or a more distant search, but they could still do the same task. Okay, so here I am then in the Victoria Park area, and I happen to be a year 6 student who goes to St. John the Baptist. He's just there. Zoom out a little bit. And I want to know how long it takes me to get to school. Or not how long, how far is my journey from school. And I live on Cecilia Road. I'm going to just choose Cecilia Road as an example. So I'm going to draw a line. Why is the line or shape gone away? Go back to this one. There we go. Sorry, I was on the deriving directions. That's why. So I'm going to add a line from my house in Cecilia Road to school. When I click on the end to finish it, route to school, click save, and you can see, you probably just about see in the bottom left hand corner, you've got the distance of that route. And you can also edit it again as you did before. So you can add information. Yeah, so you can tell people how you walked. You can add photographs. So you can take pictures of the local area, of your house, of the school, and so on and so forth. So the students can kind of add extra information to the dot that they've added or the route that they've added in the process of adding those things. So you could actually have on this one map all those routes for all your students in your class to your school each day. And it can include that detour down that little road to pick up your friend Anne Mohammed or Billy or Sarah, whoever. So you can make it very detailed and give a great deal of information about the distances that they travel to and from school, which is actually very useful for you. Okay. So if we go with this theme still of thinking about distances and spaces and sizes, let's say we're going to then move on and do an investigation about Victoria Park. And one of the things we might want to do is decide or work out how large Victoria Park actually is. So what you can do is you can actually draw a shape around the park, and clearly the more time you take to be accurate with this, the more accurate it is. I'm just going to click save this time. I can rename it again, but this time, as well as the distance around the park, you've also got the hectareage of the park as well. And as before, you can go in and you can do searches for the park and then search some images. There's Lutyens War Memorial, which is really very famous architect. It's actually a very pretty park. It used to be the race course in Leicester apparently, but now it's just a public park. Okay, so adding locations, adding shapes, adding routes, all measured to some quite high degree of accuracy is really, really very useful. And whilst we're thinking about these shapes, I'm just going to zoom right out for a moment so we can see the whole of the UK and more besides. Just giving it a chance to refresh so we can see. There we go. That will do fine. Okay. All of this work I've done, if you look on the left hand side of my screen, has all been doing in this bit that's called untitled layers. I've added some other layers. You can see when I did the directions, there was another layer added there. I've also added a layer called a UK shape comparison, and you'll see now there's a little shape appeared on top of the UK. I'm going to click on it and close the little pop-up window, so the shape is still there. Can you see my hand is now an arrow, a finger pointed hand? I can grab that shape and move it, and if you look, as you move up this particular map projection, I can never remember whether it's Peters or Mercator, I'm never sure which one it is. You can see it changes its size relative to its position from the equator. So you can do not enormously accurate, but pretty accurate comparisons. And you can see that it's about a quarter, perhaps less, the size of Libya, but actually maybe 10 or 12 times the size, the 12th the size of Greenland, but probably twice the size of Iceland. So it allows you to start to do some comparisons with other countries, because as you move towards the equator, it shrinks in size. So that, for me, for a geographer, it's quite a rough tool. Obviously, you're not going to be accurate measurements, but it's a really nice little additional tool that you can do to make some comparisons with the data that you've got. And understanding relative size of things, I think it was certainly in my geography time, was a difficult concept. You couldn't understand that this enormous country you lived in was actually quite small relative to other places. So had I had that tool, that would have been really very useful. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom right back in then and just show you a couple of other things. And before I finish, I'm going to just turn that UK shape comparison off so it disappears. Give it a moment so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. Back into the center of Leicester. My mouse is too sensitive. There we go, we're getting there. Okay, so other things that we can do. You'll notice that I've got two other little things here, other layers, and one is theatres. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Too far again. My mouse is quicker than the screen is drawing, so it's unnerving me because the data is not refreshing quickly enough. I just want to close that down so that's not in the way. And I'm going to close that directions down so that doesn't disturb our view. So we can see now, get rid of the cathedral, where the theatres are in Leicester. Okay, well, you can do interesting things again. Thinking about perhaps application with geography. Well, actually, how does that relate to where the car parks are? And you can see that for a significant number of the car parks, they are actually very close to theatres, which is kind of where you want them to be, isn't it? Of course, so you can park up and get into the theatre relatively easy. Now, there are some that aren't, and again, there's learning to be done there, isn't there? Talking about, well, why is there two large ones there? Well, because High Cross is a major shopping centre. So you begin to see that there's a logic and pattern to these. Why is there one over by the park? Well, there's a theatre right next to it, and there's the park. So again, there's a reason for a car park to be located where it's located. So the application for maps generally, I think, is very high. There's lots and lots of potential of things you can do right across the age range. So if you are a school that's both prep and senior, and there's certainly applications right across all the age ranges here. And the tools are really, really easy to use. And the last tool that I didn't show you here is the distance measure tool. So if I select that, it's literally just exactly what it says on the tin. Just draw a line that gives you as the crow flies, distances from A to B, which is really very, very neat and useful. Okay, so that's kind of the internal tools. There's just one of the two I just want to quickly show you, if I may, and then I'm going to finish. I'm just going to add an untitled layer and then go and find it, which should be at the top. Okay, go back in there. Oh, there you go. It's disappeared. Hold on. Here we go. There's my new untitled layer. I found it now. You'll notice just underneath it, there is an import option. If you've got a set of data, so if you've collected addresses and postcodes from your students in order to do a local studies project, then you can go to your Google Drive, find that Excel spreadsheet that was populated from the Google form that you used to collect the data. And as long as they've put a location in there, then you can use that location to import it all, and it'll say what do you want to call the point and what do you want to use to locate it, and it will put them on the map for you automatically. So relatively simple data entry. Each person puts in their own data. you'd collect it in a single spreadsheet and use that to import that data into your map, and then you get a complete layer with all the data in it already ready to go. So it's a really neat and quick way to import the data. When I worked at Dixie Grammar School before I started working for Ian at Sea Learning, and we used to use a Google form for people to put in their location of where they came from on open days, so we knew what kind of people were coming to visit us on open days. And I had the form on one computer and the map on another, and my technician wrote a little clever little bit of script that copied the data across automatically, so it automatically appeared on the map instantly, which was a really neat little way of doing it. So they were fascinated, the students particularly loved the fact they could put their address in, told us where they were, and they could see themselves appear on the map within a few seconds, which was a great little tool. Any questions about that fly through Google My Maps?
Paul, no, there's some good questions coming through in terms of the comparison of sizes of maps and whatever else. And in terms of existing data that a school might have, then do you have any sort of advice for the people listening about how you can use data sets that you might gather to populate maps?
In terms of, are the data sets out there already?
No, data sets that you might collect through Google Form, like addresses and where you were born and things like that.
Oh, right, okay. Well, the first thing is to consider the data you're collecting, of course. I mean, it's for internal use. It's perfectly legitimate task for you to do that, in terms of whether you're worried about whether you should collect it. The school already holds that data, and you as a teacher in local parentis has access to that, so there shouldn't be any worry about that. You just clearly wouldn't make it public, so that doesn't present a problem in terms of that. Entering it into the form is just a simple text process, so that doesn't present any problems. It is worth saying that there are data sets out there for some things that you can already use, and maps already out there that you can use. So someone asked earlier about volcanic activity, and I'm pretty certain, I didn't look to check in between the two sessions, but I'm pretty certain that there are some data, Google Maps already out there that show you volcanic activity. And there's an Anne Frank website and Google Map, there's a Beatles Google Map. So there are people creating maps that they're making public for you to use if you want to see some other examples, or to use their data rather than you do it for yourself. Okay.
Okay, Paul, that's great. Thank you very much for your time, and again, thank you for sharing your practice around the use of Google Maps for everybody who has been listening. So that brings us neatly to our final sort of session for this afternoon, and it's my privilege again to welcome Rowan McNichol. Rowan's the head of digital literacy down at Sevenoaks Prep School, right on the edge of the hill down there on the downs, and probably Rowan's still a very snowy sort of part of the country. Rowan's going to share some really amazing examples of how virtual reality is being used to support deeper learning in schools. And so, Rowan, with no further ado, the floor is yours to finish our session with VR for everyone. Over to you, Rowan.
Thank you very much, Ian, and for the introduction. Yes, so just to follow on from Ian's introduction, indeed, my Twitter handle is here if you would like to connect after the session. And yes, I'm working as the head of digital learning at Sevenoaks Prep School in Kent. Previously, I've worked in Dubai really for the last 8 years. So this is my sort of first year back in the UK after several years away. And over the last really around 7-8 years or so, I've been working in the field of virtual reality in education, as well as augmented reality. In fact, I think the terms virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, I think they could all be sort of, they're combined essentially, because it's all about providing immersive experiences for students, so that they can experience the different topics they're learning about in a more interactive, engaging way. So I'd like to really share this afternoon some of my experiences in working in VR, using different approaches in the classroom. And also sort of discuss Google's overall approach, which is to try to democratize VR, really, to try and make it as accessible as possible for a wide audience. So to start with then, I think really my journey with VR certainly started with Google Cardboard headsets. These are headsets that can be purchased for quite a reasonably cheap price. If I just show you here on Amazon, for instance, you can pick them up for £5–10 approximately, because the headsets themselves are literally just a piece of cardboard that can be folded together. It has some lenses. The power is really in the device that you insert into the headset. So, for instance, it might be a smartphone or something else like an iPod Touch. Really what happens is it creates a stereoscopic image to create that sort of virtual reality and sort of confuse your brain. So we started using these and found some pretty exciting results early on. And what I'll do is I'll just share a video with you now which sort of shows Google's promo video from their Expeditions Roadshow from last year, where they used these Google Cardboard headsets, as well as a special app that I'm going to be talking about after called Expeditions.
My name is Ty and I'm 11 years old. I can hold my breath for 18.9 seconds. Because one day, when I grow up, I want to be a deep sea diver. I want to explore the Pacific Ocean. But I haven't been for a swim in the sea yet. Today at school, something really fun happened.
Morning, class.
Miss took us on a school trip.
Today's lesson is exploring the world's oceans.
But this wasn't a normal school trip.
Can we collect one of these viewers and look inside? Wow!
That is amazing.
Who spotted a shark?
We visited the Great Barrier Reef in Australia.
Wow, we're swimming towards it. Look, there's a massive one there. Okay, what can you see?
There's a turtle.
Are we ready for another adventure?
Yeah.
That is massive.
That's a lot of fish.
Okay, so hopefully you've seen in that video that the teacher who sort of runs the expedition, the teacher is the guide, sort of controls and manages the whole experience, and students are kind of looking around them, and the teacher kind of guides them towards different aspects of the VR scene that they're looking at, whether it be an underwater scene or a rainforest. And it creates a really immersive environment, but also it's very powerful in that the teacher can explain and sort of help students access different places they wouldn't otherwise be able to sort of experience. We've been using this particular app quite a lot in my school this year already, and I've been using it in the past few years, and it really is absolutely fabulous. It's available for free, which sort of ties in with my sort of title really for this talk, which is that virtual reality, Google is making strides in an effort to make virtual reality for everyone. So it's free. It can be downloaded on Google Play or the iOS App Store. But the great thing is it can also be used in a wide range of devices. So we've used this app on iPads, and it works really effectively. As well as that, it can, be used on other Android tablets. And also, if you have access to a VR headset, then it can be used alongside mobile phones, which are inserted into the headset, or something like an iPod Touch. So it really, it is definitely one of the standout apps for allowing students to immerse themselves and sort of gain a virtual reality experience. I'll just share with you now as well, if you're thinking about how you could use this, whether it be a primary school or a secondary school. Secondary schools are obviously perhaps a little easier if students are allowed to for this kind of project, maybe through an acceptable use policy. But if they can bring their own phones in, providing those phones have a gyroscope or accelerometer, meet the sort of required specifications, then the advantage is students already have a phone that they could bring in for this, which could then be inserted into quite cheap Google Cardboard headsets. But I found for primary school, something like the ViewMaster, just being that bit more rugged. And again, the price point isn't too steep, so it's around about £15 if you pick up a discount for the headset, and this works quite well with the younger students. And again, inside that you could have something, I think Ian shared with me earlier that Nokia have, I think Nokia 3 priced around £120, or something else like an iPod Touch provides a device that, where you could have a bank of these devices. And as I say, we've used these in my current school, and the students absolutely love using them because it really brings their learning to life. It sort of unlocks doors that you just wouldn't. The impact of a picture in a textbook is just nowhere near as powerful as looking at these scenes in virtual reality. So as well as Google Expeditions, there's also YouTube 360, and we've used these some YouTube 360 videos both in my previous school and at secondary level, as well as right the way down to sort of year 1 students in my current school, where they looked at videos of African animals in 360. But anyway, the YouTube 360 platform, you just open up YouTube and type 360. It'll bring you to this sort of just basically a collection of YouTube videos. And there's lots here that you can sort of scroll through and start to pick out those that would sort of be useful in your own subject area in an educational context. And if I just share with you one video now, I think this again helps prove the point that what Google are really trying to do is to have a virtual reality ecosystem that promotes virtual reality for everyone. So in other words, you can actually look at these videos without actually having a headset on. You can experience what it would be like in VR. And of course, these videos are all available for free. So I'll play this video now.
It is not often a mother has to lead her cub away from the pride, but it happens.
So this is a National Geographic 360 video, and even without a headset, you can start to look around. I think I've just clicked around the video, but you can start to look around and see everything in 360 degrees, which is incredibly powerful. So that's YouTube 360. Google also have another selection of immersive videos, which is the Google Spotlight Stories collection. And there's a collection already available, and we'll hopefully see more content added over time, because these are incredibly powerful in terms of storytelling. Ian Phillips has been using these with some of his boys to kind of help promote creative writing. If I just take you to the website and show you how it works. So you can just Google it, Google Spotlight Stories, and you can also download the different stories onto iOS or onto Android. And there's quite a selection already there. And you'll see a little description of what each one is about. But the artistry and the visuals in these stories are incredible, and they provide a really immersive way for students to learn about, different different subject areas, topics, and these are definitely well worth a look. If I just open one for you now, which is Pearl. Pearl is a story of a little girl and her father who go sort of traveling. It can really help bring out the emotion. I think a lot of VR will sort of provide these opportunities to really look at sort of the world around us as it should be, which is, of course, 360. And I think journalism will increasingly move in that direction because it's more natural. So if I just show you this video briefly. So even without a VR headset on, you can look around this scene and start to sort of understand the story as it develops. But of course, the great thing is students will sort of, to get the full understanding of what's happening, they will need to look around them to determine the emotions of the characters at different scene points. So there's a lot of power in terms of immersive storytelling with these kind of videos. And now I'll move on to sort of the higher end VR headsets. There's now obviously quite a few different headsets in the market, also with the mixed reality headsets from Windows. And then you have the big players like Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, and lots of other headsets coming onto the market as well. And with the sort of with these headsets, whilst the cost obviously is higher, the experiences are incredible. It is really next level VR, and it'll be great to see as time goes along, these headsets become cheaper and more widely available for classrooms. But if I can kind of describe some of the learning that can take place, and then share a video of HTC Vive in action from my previous school that we used, we found that, you know, there's 4 big areas that can that students can really start to help them learn more efficiently with VR. And they are multi-sensory learning, experiential learning, immersive and emotional learning. So in terms of multi-sensory, being able to use their hands when they're moving really helps sort of experience what they're actually immersed in. So it's not just simply looking at a particular collection of scenes. It's actually about the combination of optically what they're experiencing, as well as auditory and spatial sound, and then of course haptics. So as the experiences become more multi-sensory, and by the way, these, if anyone has used something like the HTC Vive or Oculus Rift, I mean, the experiences are already incredible, and what you can do in the classroom, as I'll shortly show you, is so powerful. But all of that leads really to sort of learning through experience, which is essentially which is the whole area of experiential learning. It's about constructivism. It's about students, you know, the absolute opposite of just sort of looking at static pictures in a book. It's about them being physically or being sort of mentally believing they are immersed in a particular environment, like a rainforest or some other scene, and then interacting with that. So picking things up and moving leaves apart, if they believe they're in a rainforest, to see what's sort of lurking behind. And that's experiential learning. And that's possible with VR. And then, of course, immersive learning. So they can, they believe they are actually there. We have used various apps. One example is to sort of gain the experience of sort of being on the Titanic. And, you know, when we've done this, students have, after they've experienced it, have said, wow, it was, you know, it was like I really was on the Titanic, because they truly believe and they're learning the whole sort of the whole experience as if it really happened and not just reading about it passively. And finally, emotionally, you know, if we can build empathy, if we can help students, you know, feel as they're using VR, it's going to obviously evoke more emotions and help improve their understanding of what they're actually experiencing and learning about. So Google have 3 major apps which are available on different platforms to really promote deeper learning with virtual reality. There's Tilt Brush for creating artistic 3D scenes. There's Google Earth VR, which is their virtual reality version of Google Earth, where you can sort of fly around quite quickly to different places if you have a good broadband connection. And finally, Blocks, which is almost like an evolution of Tilt Brush, where you can build and construct in 3D. I'm going to share with you now, we've used all of these apps in our classrooms, and the students find them incredibly powerful. But I'm just going to share one of them with you now, which is Tilt Brush, which was used by an IB student in my previous school. And she found that using that really helped her express creatively what she was trying to do.
I'm Hannah, I'm a 6th form art student at Just Dubai, and today I'll be using Google Tilt Brush to create a VR version of one of my sculptures for my final exhibition. The thing with virtual reality for my sculpture was I worked a lot with tension to be able to get the shapes and forms that I wanted, and in Tilt Brush, obviously, that didn't have to play a part, so I could just pull the pieces as far as I wanted, and that created a very different result than I had originally done. It was absolutely amazing just to be able to work with the Tilt Brush and kind of see how my piece would work on a different scale and with like different materials and things like that.
So just a quick thank you to Just Dubai, Mark Steed and Steve Bambury for allowing me to share the video. We used the HTC Vive in various different classrooms last year in both primary and secondary. And it was incredibly exciting to see students' reaction to this kind of technology, where they obviously are able to do things and experience things that they just, you know, would never have been able to do so before without this kind of technology, allowing them to express themselves and experience learning in an entirely new, different way. And these are available at very low cost. Like Tilt Brush is around £12–14, and the others are free. And that ties in again with Google trying to create as many different routes into virtual reality as possible and make it really as accessible as possible. And sort of wrap up sort of the next area that Google are developing is augmented reality. There's already a lot of tools out there for augmented reality, but it's going to be quite exciting to see what they do with the AR version of Expeditions. And they're currently starting a roadshow in the US, which will hopefully make its way across to the UK, just like Expeditions started in the US, and VR Expeditions started in the US and eventually made its way across the Atlantic. And I'd like to just share the video with you, which kind of shows what they're aiming to do with AR. And I quite like this kind of tagline that they have, which is, with VR, you can go anywhere, and with AR, you can see anything. So I'll share that with you now.
All right, who wants to see a volcano? 3, 2, 1. Whoa! Look at that lava, look at that smoke coming out of that.
Pretend you're an airplane and fly over the tornado.
That's the top of it. What do you see? These are asteroids, meteorites.
We're learning about DNA and genes, things that we can't see. And so the most exciting thing for me with the AR technology was that I could see kids get an aha moment that I couldn't get by just telling them about it.
The minute I saw it pop up on the screen, it made me want to get up and walk to it.
You actually get to turn around and look at things from all angles. So it gave us a nice perspective.
See if you can figure out what that might be based on what you know about the respiratory system.
I got to see where the alveoli branched off, and I could look inside them and see how everything worked, which I never saw before, and it was really, really cool.
Okay, so just to finish up, hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the practical ways that you can incorporate VR into your classroom, whether it be Google Cardboard headsets where students put in their own phones, or whether it be tablet devices, or perhaps one of the content streams like YouTube 360 and the collection of videos that are available there, or the Google Spotlight series, or maybe you have access to a more powerful headset. You know, there's so many different routes into VR, this very exciting field. And if you'd like to ask any questions, or you want to know how you can get started, you know, please don't hesitate to contact me. That's my Twitter handle. But of course, Ian, as host, will be able to share some practical tips with you as well. Thank you very much.
Ron, thank you again for an excellent presentation. One of the things that we often hear people talking about is technology for technology's sake. But I think what you've been able to share with us all today is a real insight into how these technologies are being used to support teaching and learning in lots of different ways. And I'm sure that the people who've been listening will really sort of appreciate that and spark some ideas off in their own schools. So again, thank you very much for taking part. I hope you have a safe rest of the day, and the snow doesn't affect you too much down in Sevenoaks. So thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, cheers.
Okay, so I'd like very much now to bring today's session to a close. On behalf of Ian Phillips, the ISC Digital Strategy Group and ourselves, Sea Learning. We'd like to thank all the presenters this afternoon for taking time to share how they're using technology in their schools. And of course, very much like to thank all of the people across the country who've been sat listening and contributing through the chat. Your participation is very, very much appreciated. We will be sharing the slides, resources, and recordings with everybody who has attended. So again, thank you very much for taking part. We will organize a face-to-face event probably sometime in June or July, when hopefully the weather is so much more favorable and pleasant. So with that, thank you, and today's session is concluded. Bye for now.